It's so nice to have some of our esteemed colleagues who have helped so much all the institutions through this process of our coaches. So we're going to want to talk a little bit about this. So the amazing diagram, and I'm just making fun, that you get inside of seeing is the coaches at the bottom, which are very important for us. One of our coaches is not available here, which is living in Holland at the moment, but we hope to have her on Teams, and they are sorting that out at the moment. So here are the names of them, and I'm going to ask each of them just to say who they are and where they come from.
Morning everyone, my name is Elizabeth Booi. I'm from the University of the Western Cape.
Good morning everyone, I'm Nthabiseng Ogude and I'm from the University of Pretoria.
Good morning everyone, I'm Wendy Kilfoil. I started with the first phase of Siyaphumelela representing the University of Pretoria.
Good morning, Bala, Pillay. I'm from University of KwaZulu-Natal.
Is Ermien here yet, or? Okay. So, what we would like to just think about is to think about how coaches actually worked and how they did and what was their implementation. So the whole idea about having a coach is that they help the institutions understand the ways in which student success can be implemented in the institutions. And so it's about thinking about how do you get people to work together, how do you use data, how do you implement strategies, and then also how do you evaluate what you've done in student success. So during this session, we're going to try and give you some ideas about the generic aims and the practices of the coaches. Also gain knowledge about the current Siyaphumelela project. And we want to celebrate some of the communities of highlighting some of the excellent work that our coaches have done. So we have a number of questions that we are going to ask the panel, and each coach will answer the one. So Bala, you'll be the first one. So what are the generic aims and practices of coaching in Siyaphumelela?
Thank you, Alan. So we begin with a MOU that we have as coaches, and this captures the expectation of our funders, the Kresge Foundation, and also the SADI and the project, Siyaphumelela project. And in this MOU, we are expected to participate in professional development, so they don't take any chances with us. They don't assume anything. So this is very important, the participation in professional development. And having gone through it, I must say, I think it was really important for us. I'll come back to that. We also expected to visit each network university that we coach at least 3 times. In the first year, and also apart from the 3 visits, we are available at call, we are available all the time to assist our universities that we coach in any way that they require. During our visits, we focus on introducing the Siyaphumelela project. Fortunately, a lot of universities know about it already, it's been around for a while, but we do reinforce that. We meet with the executive members We meet with the student success committees or the equivalent that exists at the institutions. We also help to identify at-risk modules. We help in integrating data analytics. Data is really key to this project, and that's quite important. We also look at tools that we have, ICAT, the Institutional Capacity Assessment tool. We assist with planning. And all of this is captured in the MOU. And also we provide ad hoc support. It differs from university to university. And this can be in the form of service workshops, integrating data across the university. And we expect you to participate in the Siyaphumelela network activities. These include convenings, conferences like this, and other activities which also occur at a regional level. So during this process, we as coaches, together with our colleagues from Achieving a Dream, we've developed a coaching model. This evolved with time. And in this model, the way we operate, the coach interacts primarily with the team lead of the institutions that we coach, and a member of the executive who oversees the student success work. We also, as coaches, we seek to understand the institution's strategic plan, although there's a lot of common goals, but each institution has got its own strategic plan. It changes, changing every 5 years. It's good for us to understand that, understand the culture of the institution, the student success structures that exist, the resources of the university, and the key players and their roles in driving student success. So it's actually important for us to understand that. We're expected to spend the equivalent of 3 full working days in the year to support each university that we coach. But as I pointed out, we do far more than that in different ways. And we serve many functions as coaches, amongst them being a respectful and critical friend to each university's student success committee, and that's quite important. So I spoke to you about professional development that we expected to participate in, and that's important for us. And as I said, having gone through the process, I think it was very important. It certainly helped us in being coaches to our universities and colleagues. The initial coaching came from our colleagues at Achieving the Dream. This started long before we started as coaches. I think there was good planning to prepare us for this role, and I must say that we benefited tremendously from the coaches from ATD in the US and their support. It was really sustained support and very, very intentional. This included attending workshops, meetings, and then in addition we had individual coaches assigned to us. I'll name them. We had Jan Lydon, we had Nancy Finazzo, and I mentioned ICAT, and any other tool that we required was also part of our development. We had been invited to coaches retreats in the US, and I want to thank Kresge for that. I think it was also very important in our professional development, meeting the other coaches, sharing the experiences, and that was really important for us. Then the learnings in our development from South African universities, those that we coach individually, and those in the network, and also from all your colleagues here. I think you all played a role in our learning. So I want to thank you for that on behalf of our coaches. And then we also then expected in our development to build a community of practice amongst these South African coaches. And also we need to generate new knowledge in this process. So I'll leave you with that, and my colleagues will fill in the gaps, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Bala. Now it's Nthabiseng's question, And this is about what did you learn from the institutions in which you worked with?
Thank you very much, Alan. I think the most important thing to start with is to acknowledge that we have very diverse institutions with diverse histories, and they also work in unique contexts and institutional cultures. So as coaches, we have to understand that context, the capacities, the resource capacities, as Bala has already said, and then the strengths, especially the data analytics capability. Now, together with the DVC and teaching and learning, or in some cases the DVC student affairs, we bring all the institutional initiatives into alignment. And we found that one of the most important lessons is the institution should be able to articulate its theory of change. Where do they want to move? Where are they and where do they want to move? And our role then is to kind of nudge them, to move at deliberate pace and intentionality, to achieve some early gains. So what are some of those early gains? Bala talked about one of them, the high impact modules. But what does what have we learned from the high impact modules? I think the high impact modules is more like an institution holding a mirror to itself. What do you actually look like as an institution? Because you can be in one institution, but you may not actually know what story does your data actually tell. So that's one of the things we've realized is important. And the Deputy Vice Chancellor, this is another learning. The Deputy Vice Chancellor is really critical to ensuring that the institution-wide Student Success Committee does report to Senate. There's no point for that committee to be on the sidelines. If it doesn't report to Senate, it doesn't exist. And then how do we ensure that there's commitment and it's an enduring one? So we embed that fundamental of critical role of leadership, and we also we also try to say that there should be a regular engagement between the coach and the lead and the Deputy Vice Chancellor. And you will have seen various vice chancellors and deputy vice chancellors here, during this conference. And that is one of the things we believe is important. They should attend national conferences like this when they can, even if it's for a short period. What should the leaders do institutionally? They should, at every opportunity, when they address both internal and external persons, talk about how important student success is as an institutional priority. But that should also be linked to how is teaching excellence actually recognized in the institution. One good practice is also for the deputy vice chancellors, and we know they are very busy, to hold meetings at least once a semester with the lead and the coach. And then institutionally, the Deputy Vice Chancellor has to be there when the launch of the Student Success Team, during the launch of a Student Success Team or committee, and also the ICAD, that the institutional capacity assessment tool that Bala referred to. Now, there have been cases where the lead resigns or the Deputy Vice Chancellor themselves resigned. We have learned that it's very important to communicate timelessly to the coach. You don't want any time left, and you want to make sure that there is a smooth handover. During COVID, it was quite a challenge, when there was a gap, because already it was a very difficult environment. But one of the DBCs I worked with made sure that they made the handover a priority. Now, one important lesson we've also learned is the lead should report to the Vice Chancellor. And if they don't, they should at least have access to the Deputy Vice Chancellor for Teaching and Learning. And they should have clout within the institution. If you put a very junior person whom the deans would not actually kind of academically respect, then the process is not very effective. Thank you very much, Alan.
Thank you. And Ermien has just joined us. Hello, Ermien.
Hi, Alan. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you for joining us from there, and thank you for the technical team to get this right. And it's just in time for you to answer your question. How did you help your institutions learn about using evidence for student success?
Alan, a challenging question, and just to add that I've been able to hear you all along, so it's just that I couldn't get my face in, so here I am. So, yeah, it's certainly quite a daunting question to answer, as we know that data analytics is a speciality, and that there is scarcity of capacity in higher education. And add to this Nthabiseng's point that universities in South Africa are very diverse, and that they are complex environments. And I think all of us find them quite difficult to work in at this stage of our history. And it's certainly difficult to make systematic and impactful change in environments like these. And that includes what is required to use evidence for student success. Sorry, can you hear me clearly? Yes. I have a bit of feedback.
Fine. Continue, very clear.
Okay. So many of us, like whether we are coaches or people working in the institutions themselves, speak of change or innovation fatigue and having to manage too many different processes and tasks. So there is a sense of being overwhelmed. So I want to try and answer the question against this background and also against the background of what Bala and Nthabiseng both said. So on the one hand, supporting universities to use evidence, we make use of the generic training of the expectations of us as coaches and the tools, practices and structures that we've been taught about and equipped with. And then on the other hand, we've started on a journey together and we pull our prior experience and expertise, but also the new learnings as we start applying what we've learned in real environments of the institutions that we work in. So I just want to pull out a couple of these tools, practices, structures. So in the first place, of course, there are the Know Your Data workshops that we encourage institutions to participate in. There are capacity building workshops, and then there are other follow-up national workshops as well. We advise our institutions on how to complete the provided templates and so on. So we end up asking or facilitating conversations about data in a more general way. So, for instance, asking questions like what data and data systems does your university have? And can the Know Your Data templates be completed from existing institutional data? If not, what will it take to collect or access such data routinely? And a very important question, are the data spread across different silos, or is there an integrated and accessible data system for the university? So, in discussion, such more generic conversations very quickly become more generative and more specific. And here I want to just add on to what Bala was saying about the student success committees, because these committees are very important structures. The committee itself, or a particular working group of such a committee, are very important structures to have these data conversations in. So as coaches, we also encourage using those structures, those multi-stakeholder structures to discuss data. So it's really important that these student success committees have people from across the university so that they help to dismantle silos. So they become very good spaces to ask the more generative, specific data questions for universities around how to use evidence for student success. For instance, one of the things that we've learned very quickly is that the standard templates really do not suit all universities. So you can ask the question, what data is relevant to collect and analyze for your particular university? For instance, is race a useful category? Or are there other categories that are more important, like social class and so forth? What new data do you need to collect for your particular institution and your particular student success action plan? And trying to work out which are the most actionable data, what are the low-hanging fruit at this particular institution? And what will it take to action data at your university? So the student success committees, or working groups resembling the student success committees that are multi-stakeholder, are also very good places to discuss data sets as they come out, to commission new forms of data that needs to be collected, and to devise evidence-based student success strategies. To guide implementation, and also to monitor and evaluate whether student success initiatives are actually working. And there are also important structures for feeding results back to the university committee. So I would say a very big part of our job is to try and support building these student success committees and making sure that they are used to implement data to develop and support student success. So we know that universities are all too used to work in silos of expertise, and I think that is probably, apart from stimulating this use of data for student success, I think that is one of the primary roles of us as coaches, is to try and get institutions to work across the silos and to dismantle them. Because only then you can sort of develop a common understanding of student success across a university. You can also use these structures to build data capacity through a widely representative group on campus, and this should include students. And it also involves different groupings, and you can use different groupings on integrated projects to achieve student success goals. This should relieve some of the pressure. I mean, if you have dedicated groups working on different parts of implementing the student success strategy, you could relieve the work pressure that is felt frequently by DDCs or institutional leads for particular leadership teams. How am I for time, Ella?
Just a few more minutes.
Okay, so I just want to come back to something that Bala said about the ICAT. So I don't want to go into detail about what the ICAT is, but just to point out that that is one of the tools that we as coaches were taught to use, and we also assisted to adapt the American version of the ICAT to South African circumstances. That is a work in progress. I think it could still be made more pertinent to South African context. But this is a tool that generates data across an institution fairly quickly from staff. It's not a student tool, it's a staff tool. As coaches, we facilitate use of this instrument, as well as the multi-stakeholder conversation that follows the use of the instrument, that is called the Capacity Cafe. And in our experience, using the iPad can be a very strong consensus and team building tool. It is, the same metaphor as Nthabiseng used, it is a way of collecting data that holds up a mirror to the institution. Like, what do staff think about its own institution in various categories, like the vision of the institution, whether there's equity, the strategies, the policies, and so forth. Even the technology, the IT technology, the levels of that at an institution. So it really brings out the strengths and the areas of challenge. And it is a way, it's a tool that helps you facilitate intentional change management and guide clear communication about your student success campaign. And that is the message I want to end with. And that I started with. Many of us in higher education speak of fatigue, and that we are overwhelmed by all the processes, structures, tasks, and so on. So an important area that we as coaches work in and that we've learned to work in is to help institutions consolidate processes. So I would say the iPad is a very good tool to reflect on the university strategic plan or institutional development plan, whatever the institution calls it. It can help us get another set of data to look at that strategic plan and see whether there are areas that are missing, what are the low-lying fruit, where is data needed, and so forth. But it can also help us align with other processes like the UCDPs. Universities should use the UCDPs to run their Siyaphumelela student success strategies. And then you can also align the different monitoring and evaluation processes. So the data that is needed to see whether an initiative is working or not could come out of a process like your UCDP monitoring and evaluation process. And finally, we definitely need to maximize building data capability across the sector. And we need to ask ourselves how we do that. And of course, we, as a team of coaches, have the wonderful advantage of having Elizabeth Booi amongst us as coach, who is a data specialist. And she has done, I can talk on Elizabeth's behalf, she has started something called a data analytics working group at UWC, and I think it's important for us to take such initiative forward and to think about how we can build data literacy across our national landscape of institutions in order to strengthen this work in using evidence for student success. So thanks everyone for listening, and obviously there's a lot more to be said here and a lot of progress that has been made. These are just a few points.
Thank you, Ermien, from the other side of the world. And we have Wendy to talk to us about the challenges that you encountered as a coach and how do some of these challenges still exist.
Thank you, Alan. Working in a community of practice, we commonly discuss challenges both amongst the South African coaches and with our colleague coaches in the ATD. Many are unique to particular institutions, but some are common across institutions. And we've already heard about some of them. And I just want to highlight again three things. One is that is about silos. Another concerns universities wanting to do too much. And the third is about resistance to change. So silos exist across universities and within universities. And I think we'll see here and with other challenges that they have to some degree been mitigated and to some degree they still exist. So if we come to universities, in 2015 when we started with the first phase of Siyaphumelela, it was each university for itself. And I do think that Siyaphumelela has been good about breaking down silos around student success across the country. And when you think we had 5 universities and now 17 universities, I think this has had quite an impact. And it's been done through convenings, conferences, working groups, the website, and the use of coaches, for example. And we've heard this multiple times in multiple presentations over the last couple of days, so it's not news to you. What I think we could do more of is treat what we're doing as part of the scholarship of teaching and learning, that we deliberately work at designing what we're doing as research, and we publish on it so that other people can critique what we're doing and that they can build on what we're doing. It's no good keeping all of these great innovations in-house. So I think that would be one way in which we could further break down silos, not only within the country, but across our borders. Because what we're doing, we heard quite clearly from Tim this morning, would be valuable, for example, in New Zealand. The other issue is about silos is within institutions. There are silos and they still exist. But the insistence on this Student Success Committee, a multi-stakeholder Student Success Committee, is so important. I think that Ermien said a great deal about it, so I'm not going to elaborate too much on that. The ICAT tool, ICAT standing for the Institutional Capacity Assessment Tool, again brings the entire university together. Everybody can be asked to respond to it, and then it can be discussed, and the coaches facilitate the entire process, from the publication, the publicizing of the ICAT to the analysis in these groups, World Cafes. And I think what we have seen is that it is not business as usual across the South African system or within universities, because we've seen creeping into strategic plans goals related to student success where they did not exist before, and into integrated frameworks. So I think Siyaphumelela and the coaches within, like as part of Siyaphumelela, have had a distinct impact on silos in South Africa. The next point is about universities wanting to do too much. Now, universities are naturally hotbeds of ideas. Everyone's got an idea. Siyaphumelela has flooded the South African system with yet more ideas, but you can't do everything effectively. And I think that coaches can very effectively work with universities in their annual planning to focus, to get every voice heard, but eventually to settle on 1 or perhaps up to 3 wildly important goals. They're called WIGs. We learned this, I learned this from Jan Lynn in the first phase. Wildly important goals. One of my colleagues here, Nthabiseng, worked at one of her universities shortly after lockdown had lifted and staff were coming back to campus. She actually went on campus and did a contact planning session with one of her universities. I've worked online. One of the things I do, you can use Jamboard, which is a nice piece of technology, which is like sticky notes on a board, and you cluster ideas and things. But what I asked each person to do was to put one idea, one wildly important goal, in the chat. And then we discussed them, and although everybody was heard, we eventually whittled that down to one wildly important goal. Now, we've already heard institutional leads are really, it's an add-on to their jobs. Right? We heard it from people yesterday, we heard it today again, and they really try to do too much. And if you have a wildly important goal and a student success committee, you've got a recipe there for success, and to relieve the burden on one person. Because one wildly important goal, like building data capacity in your heads of academic departments, requires a number of activities. So maybe your Centre for Teaching and Learning and your IR people have focus group interviews with the HODs to hear what their problems are, to say we've got these data, how can we match? Then you go back to your Student Success Committee report on that, work with IT to develop dashboards, work with your deputy deans who are on the committee and your HODs to pilot, refine them, develop training for the HODs on how to use the dashboards, and then scale across the university, which I think is something which sometimes we miss out on with some boutique things that we do. We really need to scale, and I think this is one way to do it. Then finally, I think every organization resists change in some way. I think a good evidence-based argument can assist. I think success stories from other institutions and from working with the willing within your own institution can help to overcome change. An institutional lead might say, but I can't change the culture of my university. If you have a student success committee, you don't have to try it alone. You have got peer support, you have got holistic solutions, and you've got the opportunity to scale. And I think that in having coaches involved with your student success committees and your leadership, you have an external person with a knowledgeable and sympathetic ear to help you to work through some of these issues and gradually achieve the outcomes which you set out to achieve at the beginning. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Wendy. So we have one coach who is the guru of the data in the coaches, and also very important for Siyaphumelela. So Elizabeth, what we would like you to do is, what were the successes of coaching, and what was the context in which this was all working?
Thank you, Ermien. I think we can all agree that Siyaphumelela has brought about significant change and benefits to our institution as a whole. We have seen remarkable increase in the networking, shared understanding of what student success means. And we also saw a heightened awareness of the importance of data in enhancing students' outcomes in our institution. Initially, the journey towards student success was met with resistance in many institutions, and I think the other coaches have spoken about this. And it was a slow progress in terms of how institutions were moving towards having student success committees or starting to engage on their data. But I'm very pleased to announce and tell you and report to you that almost all universities, if not all universities that are part of Siyaphumelela network, have student success committee, and they are looking at their data. The other thing where we, mostly as coaches, we emphasize on making analytics accessible to the wider audience, and this is achieved through the use of dashboards and reports and other tools that other universities are doing to disseminate data in their institution. Siyaphumelela services or service workshops that we offer have, I would say, one of those services is the data workshops. And that data workshop plays a crucial role in fostering a change that universities are doing in and also improving the data culture within their institution. We have seen a shift in understanding what disaggregated data is and what is it important for many other universities, because they also have different aspects or different contexts. For instance, in homogeneous universities where race is not that, where let me put it this way, in those universities where they see class as compared to a race as one of the key data points that promote or is significant to student success. Lastly, We established a vibrant community of practice amongst ourselves as coaches, which is instrumental in generating knowledge through sharing of information and engagement and discussions as well. But I also want to take you through some of the things that we have unpacked and have seen as coaches. Okay, so as coaches, we wear many hats. Firstly, we provide meaningful report on project plans and data, activities and reports, always with the spirit of appreciative inquiry. We connect the project lead and the institutions to best practices, peer institutions and higher education examples so that they can learn from and also can exchange ideas. We co-create the structures and the processes needed for strategic execution within the institution together with the student success committees and the project leads and the universities as well. And also we are responsible for guiding them in terms of the responsible next steps and monitoring and evaluation. We are also committed to promoting professional development and capacity development, because every time when there is a service workshop, we also encourage the project lead to send people, and we also encourage them to send different people, not the same people, to the same workshop, because by doing so, you are encouraging a culture of development or capacity development, and you're not only developing one person in an institution. We facilitate structured working sessions during site visits or virtual sessions, including the planning of the institutional capacity assessment tool. And importantly, we act as motivators, supporting the project leads as well as the student success teams to maintain a sense of agency and persist in the face of resistance. And this is very important, because if we don't encourage them, sometimes, like we spoke about challenges, the university do not start acting up on the activities that they need to carry out in terms of their Siyaphumelela work. In essence, we are, as part of the way we have been working, we have seen an emerging conceptual framework emerge from the way of work that we have been exposed to. We are witnessing the emergence of a transformative design process that is reshaping the student success in our institutions. This approach is a human-centric and data-driven, and it is particularly significant in the context of South African higher education. And I think also, as the coaches also alluded to, because of the diversity that exists within our institution as well. This diversity needs to be understood, respected, and incorporated into the design processes at each institution. And a key element in this transformation is the community of practice that we have already, or they also spoke about. This community of practices, which operate at the various levels, are instrumental in building capacity and transformative design. And they include institutions in Siyaphumelela network, the regional networks, working groups, and coaches as a collaborative as well within the diverse university landscape. I also need to pay a special acknowledgement and thanks to our ATD colleague coaches, in particular Jennifer, and Nancy, who work closely with us and guide us and support us in the work that we do as South African coaches to support our institutions as well. Interestingly, in contextual variability and intersecting community of practices that we just alluded to, it creates a productive tension that allows for capturing and reporting, as well as critical reflection that allows critical reflection on variability, ultimately leading to the development of a comprehensive set of best practices that we all can learn from. And these are best practices that are aimed at supporting student success in our institution. And this is the work that we do as coaches. And we thank all our institutions for the support and the relationship that we have with them. Thank you.
Thank you to all of you for informing us about this very important process. And I think what is interesting is, although we had very tight and wonderful engagements with ATD, and Carol is one of our main supporters in ATD, so thank you, Carol, for helping us with all the coaching work. The way in which the South African coaches have molded the institutions is different from the way that ATD does it, but yet it's built on the same foundations of how to infuse people to use data to understand the problems they have. So we have a few minutes if anybody would like to ask a question.
Thank you, Nthabiseng, and thank you, coaches, for this session. I just have one simple question, and if you allow me, Chair, I have a follow-up for that, based on, depending on the response. What is the future for coaching in the digital era? Considering that, as I can see the faces around here, there are more people or practitioners that are digital natives. How do you plan to take this forward? Thank you.
Who would like to answer that? Well, maybe I can just say that one of the ideas, as you've seen, that there has come out of the work of the coaches, a kind of way of thinking about how to infuse the processes that lead to student success. And one of the issues is that we need to think about how do we use grants not only from Kresi but from the government, and how coaches can help people think about that within this framework. So that's one of the ideas that is there, but I think that the basic way of thinking about student success and data analysis is now becoming quite robust in the system, is how we take this forward, and we would like to have ideas from all the audience as well. Bill.
Actually, that was my question. So thinking about going forward, I was mindful of what Wendy said, the wildly important roles, and I think about Elizabeth, Nthabiseng, Wendy, Bala, Ermien, and you, Alan, of course. What things do you think we should change in the future? Not necessarily about coaching, but that you've seen probably enhance success for institutions to make these kinds of changes, and what things maybe are worth saying goodbye to?
Okay, I've sort of been nominated here. I think with COVID we worked very much in a digital space, and it worked. But it's very nice indeed to meet people in person. So, for example, I met Cape Town people for the first time at a convening earlier this year. I greeted one of them, she sort of greeted me. And then the other one came up and she said, "Oh, Wendy, you're so much taller than I realized." And then the other one realized who I was. She said, "But you don't look like, you don't look at all like the person I keep seeing on Teams." So I think one is going to need a mix. I think one does need online tools that are easily accessible by institutions. I think that many of the Siyaphumelela ideas were already in institutions which only joined in the second phase, either as partners or as participants. So the ideas are already out there digitally through the website, for example. There are obviously other ways of doing things. We had the practice in the first phase of having a coach for the universities. Those universities did not receive a coach in the second phase. So are we going to continue with, if we get the other 6 or 7 universities that are not members, if they come on board, we give them a coach but not the others, and then we have to adapt the coaching model. We've got coaches, we've got experts, whether they are data experts like Elizabeth, or if we go into more of a scholarship teaching and learning mode, maybe coaches who can coach people on how to frame your work as research and write it up. So maybe that is where we need to move. Some of the universities are quite capable of operating fairly independently based on the ideas already in the system and in the good practices they already have, and the expertise they already have at the universities. Siyaphumelela has given them the opportunity, for example, I know 2 of the universities I've worked with, to appoint data analysts into student success work, instead of relying only on HEMAS people. So there's been an influence. So I think that coaching might need to change. You might need more data coaches on board. You might need more writing coaches or publication coaches, research coaches on board. So I do think that that's where we might be thinking. And I think we can have a range, and ATD actually does this. They've got a whole panel of coaches who can be called in. Institutions can request a particular kind of a coach. Leadership coach. I don't think leadership coaches ever go amiss. So they can request it, and I think we're going to have to start operating on that type of a system within South Africa as well, move beyond just the basics that we have been doing so far.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think, Bill, the wider question you asked at universities, I think there are a lot of mitigating influences to student success. One of them is the policies at universities. We have many policies that actually mitigate against student success. And I think it would be a good opportunity for institutions to look at their policies. In fact, when they were developed, they were to actually maintain standards and really make sure things are done in a proper way. And I think it's time that universities, I'm speaking from my experience and also from my interaction with other universities, I think it's an opportune time for them to look at their policies and see how can they really adapt their policies to ensure and enable student success. And many universities also have structures, and that's why we keep talking about silos. They have structures that, they emerged over time. I don't think there was proper planning in any university's creation to say, these are the structures that we must have, in order to enable student success. A lot of these structures developed over time. And I think it's also a good time to introspect, interrogate that, and see how we can do things better. So those are 2 contributions.
Thank you. I would like to thank all the coaches for their participation in this session, and I know it took quite a bit of work to do this, but I think we have explored some of the very important issues that coaches do to help institutions, and thank you very much for being part of the Siyaphumelela conference.